What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. Happy St. Patty's Day to ya! Rocking my green here. This is the total takedown for UFC London, baby. We are talking a big, awesome card. Heavyweights on top. I can't wait. We are talking overs and unders. How long are these fights? How long these fights gonna... No, I'm not trying to do an accent. I'm just stumbling over my words. We're talking about how long these fights are going to last and seeing if we can find a different angle to extract some value from these spots. The show is brought to you by Pub Sports Radio and the Superbook Sports, baby. Make sure you go check them out. First fight of the night is Muhammad Mokaev taking on Cody Durden. Total set at 2.5. Lines again presented to you by Superbook Sports. 2.5 over is plus 105. The under is minus 125. And I like me some violence here in this spot, folks. I'm looking at that under 2.5. So what we've got is Mokaev, who's a wicked sick grappler. This kid is so good on the floor. He's got awesome striking. He's reckless on the feet because he's not worried about being taken down. He thinks he can out-scramble pretty much anybody on the mat, turn that defense into offense. And his opponent, Cody Durden, is a grappling specialist himself, but he's a guy that puts some serious heat behind his punches and has a bad gas tank. We always look for violence when both fighters can finish and be finished. Massive step up for Muhammad. Not sure how he's going to look at the UFC level. Maybe Durden gives him an absolute tour of the octagon. Shout out Dan Levy, my guy. And maybe if he is the legitimate goods, he gasses out Cody Durden, chokes him out. Both these guys can get it done. So give me that under 2.5. I like violence to kick the night off. Elise Reed taking on Cory McKenna. Total again set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 240. The under 2.5 is plus 210. Women's MMA, we know it's going to be chalks to the over in these cases. Finishes are hard to come by, but this is a very low-level women's MMA fight, and we do see finishes in these circumstances, and I'd be very tempted to take a flyer on that under 2.5 at plus 110. Elise Reed, I know everyone's down on her after getting her ass kicked by Sarge, but she was up 2 weight classes from her natural. She's fighting at 115. The UFC doesn't have a 105, so this is about as low as it gets. But she's got some good striking. She's got some decent pop on her punches, and she's fighting an opponent that is very inexperienced. She's also got a pretty decent submission attack game herself. Her opponent, Cory McKenna, training at one of the best gyms possible, training with people like Sarah McMahon. Her wrestling is a huge advantage for her. She's very physical from top position. She's got good ground and pound, good submissions for her as well. There is definitely upside for both of these women to go ahead and find a submission and find a way to go ahead and win this fight. So the under 2.5, believe it or not, seems a little live to me. People might be a little overexcited on Cory McKenna, and maybe Elise Reed shows up and surprises some people, or people are absolutely right about Cory McKenna and she runs through Elise Reed. Should be fun. Under 2.5, plus 210, worth a flyer in my opinion. Jack Shore taking on Timur Valiev. Total on this one is set at 2.5. Over is minus 240. The under is once again, plus 210. I got the numbers wrong on the last one. I apologize. Elise Reed over is minus 280, plus 240 to the under. This fight is minus 240 to the over, plus 210 to the under. And this is a spot where I actually think I like the over. I don't want to lay that kind of chalk personally. That's just my style. But I do think that Jack Shore's grappling is going to be kind of the story here. Timur Valiev is going to be on the back foot, playing defense. We know he can defend those takedowns. But Shore is not a chump. I don't think if he can't get the takedown that he's just a fish out of water and not going to be able to be in this fight. I think he'll be able to strike okay with Timur Valiev, or at least survive the striking from Timur Valiev. So I kind of expect this one to hit the judges' scorecards. There could be a finish. We've seen both guys, Jack Shore's never been finished, obviously, but we've seen Timur finished. I like when both people can contribute to that under. There's the question about the standing game, and if Timur Valiev is just that much better, maybe he can get a KO on the feet. So the under is possible. It's just not a spot that I really like, or I'm going to be interested in going hard after. So probably a complete pass for me. I'll lean to the over. Nikita Kucherov taking on Paul the Bear Jew Craig. Total set at 1.5 for this bad boy. Over 1.5 is minus 135. The under 1.5 is plus 115. This says over all day to me, folks. So Paul Craig is the meme submission guy. Like, he can submit anybody, anytime. but he relies on the fight being on the mat. On the feet, he's relatively harmless. His opponent, Nikita Krylov, much more well-rounded. He's decent on the feet, got good finishing power. He's also a very strong wrestler. If he takes it to the mat, he's going to be inviting that one-win condition that Paul Craig has. If he doesn't do that, if he keeps the fight standing, or even if he just minds his P's and Q's when grappling with his wrestling top game, he should be able to grind out a win. Or, work himself potentially to a TKO victory, but Paul Craig is not the kind of guy that you KO super, super early. So I would expect this thing to go over 1.5 at -130. Again, there's a lot of upside for violence between these two guys. If this fight gets out of hand, that could be a very bad pick in hindsight, but I kind of expect it's going to be controlled by Krylov until maybe later in the fight when it isn't, and that's when Paul Craig springs the upset. So I'll say over 1.5. Shamil Abdurakhimov taking on Sergey Pavlovich. Total set at 1.5. The over plus 125. The under minus 145. And Sergey Pavlovich, simply put, doesn't get out of round one. Like, he's got one fight, I think, that's gone to the judges' scorecards. He knocks out everybody in the first couple minutes of round one, or he's got a couple of round twos, but not very many. He just has so much heat. This guy has so much power. He's a one-hit-or-quitter type of fighter. Shamil Abdurakhimov, up until very recently, was very, very durable. But now he's getting older. He's over 40, which we know is a bad choice when it comes to betting. We don't bet on fighters that are over the age of 40 unless we got a damn good reason. He's coming off a bad KO loss to Chris Daukaus. This looks like the UFC really is just setting up one of their younger prospects to have a good, solid name on his record. So I do think that it's going to be an under, even though I don't have both guys contributing to this one. I have a hard time seeing this not being Sergey via early knockout. And if Shamil Abdurakhimov is able to grind this thing out, survive that early onslaught, then I don't know much about Pavlovich after round one. There's a chance Shamil Abdurakhimov is able to flip the switch on him, tire him out, get a finish of his own. It's not out of the world for that to happen. So I will say under. Mike Grundy taking on Makwan Amir Akani. We've got total set at 2.5 for this one. Over 2.5 is minus 210. The under 2.5 is plus 180. And this is a weird one for me because these two guys fighting, it should be over, right? They're both grapplers. They're both solid, strong wrestlers. They've got some submission upside a little bit, but that's about it. Whatever happens when we see these grappler versus grappler spots, it usually ends up turning into a shitty striking match. Well, Makwan Amirkhani's coming off in a horrific knockout loss in his last fight. Mike Grundy actually swings heavies, so he's got the chance to finish this thing on the feet. And his dad, who was just diagnosed with a terminal illness, is going to be cage side, so he's going to be looking to show off. I think there's a chance that forces the action a little bit. I think there's an opportunity for these guys to get the finish because Grundy either blows his load looking for the finish and is, slim, easy pickings for Makwan with a submission, or I think he gets that finish because he's fighting with his dad, wind in his sails behind him type of situation, and he probably takes advantage of a cracked chin for Makwan Amirkhani. I do think there's some violence upside here, even though the style of the fight kind of counts to the opposite. So, again, not one that I'm going to bet. That's a tingle on the back of the neck. That's a degenerate type of look. I'm not really counting on the under 2.5 here in this spot, but I kind of lean to this fight getting finished one way or the other. Ilia Topuria taking on Jai Herbert. Another total set at 1.5 for this one. Over is plus 120. Under is minus 140. Another violent spot in my opinion. Let's say under. Ilia Topuria is going to have a massive grappling advantage here in this spot. Jai Herbert actually has some decent submissions off of his back. We know Jai Herbert can crack, so if this thing is on the feet, he stands the chance to pull the upset with the knockout. Topuria, we also know, has heavy hands. Up at 155, will the power translate? We're not entirely sure, but there's questions about Jai Herbert's chin. He's been dinged up, he's been rocked and dropped and hurt, knocked out cold by some people, so if anybody's going to knock him out, Topuria definitely is capable of doing so, and he is fast. Topuria's got the speed advantage here for sure. I think this thing's going under 1.5. I see it being a first round finish. Molly McCann taking on Luana Carolina, another women's MMA fight. This one more normal than usual. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 350. The under is plus 290. And I do think, once again, that we're headed cruising for that over. Luana Carolina, she's shown some decent submission ability. She's trying. She hasn't been able to actually catch anybody yet, but she looks to attack those front chokes. Molly McCann, ever since she got submitted by Jillian Robertson, she keeps talking about how she's training her jiu-jitsu. But at the end of the day, both these women are strikers. Luana Carolina, not somebody who's going to be easy to KO. She is tough. She is gritty. She will hang in that fight for your money. Molly McCann, The exact same with maybe more durability and a better gas tank. Like, Molly McCann ain't going nowhere, folks. So I think we're going to end up with a 15-minute striking affair on this one. Maybe a little bit of scrambly grappling mixed in, but I don't think either of these women are savvy enough with the submissions that were necessarily... I mean, there's a chance. Sorry, now that I'm talking through that, I'm like, Luana Carolina probably with those lanky-ass long arms can lock up some kind of a crazy choke on Molly if she shoots an ill-fated takedown. So there's a little chance for Luana to get a submission. There's a shot, but this is a total I want no part of. I'm going to say over. I'm going to stay completely away from it betting. Gunnar Nelson taking on Takashi Sato. Gunnar Nelson and Sato both coming off of long layoffs. Gunnar Nelson's got that submission advantage. Takashi Sato is a guy that gives up chokes relatively easily and then also has that big bomb capability, big power from this kid. Total set at 1.5. Over -140. Under is +120. And I do think this is an over simply by the way Gunnar Nelson fights. Sato is a guy who, he's kind of slow, plodding, walks forward. Gunnar Nelson's going to chip him apart. He's got that light on his toes karate style, explodes in for some big shots, strikes and combos, leg kicks. That's the kind of stuff that Sato's just going to walk straight through. He'll be okay. He'll lose on the judges' scorecards, but he's definitely going to be able to survive those types of shots. Now, if it hits the mat, if Gunnar Nelson decides to come out here and wrestle, he could end up on Takashi Sato's back in a quick and then go ahead and choke this man out. So there is under chance. Sato always could land a bomb. Maybe Gunnar Nelson's rusty and Sato comes in here and hits him with a big one. But more often than not, I think it's Gunnar Nelson by late submission after Sato slows down a little bit, or Gunnar Nelson by decision via chipping away. Paddy Pimblett taking on Rodrigo Vargas. Total set at 1.5. The over is +100 even money. The under is -120. And I do think the under is in play here in this spot. Paddy is being set up with an opponent that he can defeat. We've seen Rodrigo Vargas take bottom position, have some trouble with grappling, and Paddy Pimblett's just such a slick grappler. And even if they do end up striking, Paddy showed off some serious power, some big pop in his hands the last time he fought. And Rodrigo Vargas, while he's not the easiest guy to knock out, he overextends on his punches left and right. He also has big power. So we've seen Paddy Pimblett leave his chin up in the air a little too often for my liking. If someone's going to get him, it's going to be with a big power punch. I think the under 1.5 is interesting and makes a little sense for that fight. Arnold Allen in the co-main event taking on Dan Hooker. Total set at 2.5, over -190. The under is +170. This is a perfect opportunity for a spot where it seems like both guys absolutely could finish, but I think it's cruising to the judges' scorecards. We've got Arnold Allen, who's a slick boxer. He's got a nice jab, good footwork, likes to stay on his bike, kind of reset and run away from his opponents sometimes to get the range that he needs. He's got decent wrestling in his back pocket, decent submissions, but nowhere near the level of the guys that Dan Hooker's already faced. Hooker is tall and long. He's cutting down from lightweight back to 145. He's going to have a significant height and reach advantage here in this spot. But even when he was doing his best work at 145, he's a volume guy. He does have knockout ability. Arnold Allen is not an easy man to knock out. He does have submission ability. Arnold Allen is a solid grappler. So I really don't think either of these guys are going to find a finish. I kind of think this plays out for 15 minutes. And I think that over, even at -190, isn't a bad look. Main event time. Tom Aspinall taking on Alexander Volkov. Total set at 3.5, and this one's a little tricky. I think the under 3.5 just makes so much sense. This is a violent spot, hands down. It looks so easy. The fact that it looks so easy makes me a little scared, if I'm being completely honest, because Aspinall's going to win this thing in rounds 1 or 2. He's a big power puncher guy. He's got speed. If he looks to wrestle, we've seen him get tired in the octagon before. He's not going to be able to shoot 14 takedowns like some of Volkov's previous opponents have. If he's going to win this thing, it's going to be early and it's going to be landing a big power shot. Volkov, on the other hand, has gas for days. He can absolutely go 25 minutes. And if he takes a lesson from Cyril Gane and he goes out there and chips away at this kid, avoids the power, uses that big cage to move around and attack the legs, like, he can absolutely take this thing deep into the fight to a decision if he wants to. The catch for me here is I think that once Tom Aspinall runs out of gas, he'll be hittable. People forget how many knockouts Volkov has on his record. He's got like 21 knockouts on his record. So he is not a guy that lacks in power or finishing ability. So I think one or both of these guys absolutely can finish. I don't doubt Tom Aspinall's finishing ability. He can do it, and he will do it early if he does. I think once he tires out, again, I think it'll be round 2, round 3. maybe the beginning of round 4, and that's all covered by that 3.5. So even if Volkov gets the knockout, I do still think it's going to be under that 3.5 mark. I'm personally on the Volkov side here. I'm considering betting the under 3.5 almost as a semi-hedge, because I do think Volkov can cash that under 3.5 for me, but if Tom Aspinall wins, it's gonna be early. So I would expect him to get it done under that 3.5, and it kind of is a good way to sync up with the fighter that you like and the total that you like here in this spot. The 3.5, again, it makes me almost a little suspicious that if Volkov decides he wants to have a risk-adverse gone style, then maybe he cruises to a decision here, and that's not going to be good for anybody except for people who bet on Volkov. So that's the total takedown, folks. I like violence a lot this week. It's going to be a fun one. Good luck on all your degenerate action. I will see you tomorrow for the Undefeated Post weigh-in show. Let's roll.